Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how you can set up a LAMP stack using Oracle's VirtualBox, which can run on a Mac or a PC or even another Linux machine. LAMP is short for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. I will show you how you can install Apache 2 web server on Ubuntu 16.04 with PHP 7 and MySQL. Then I will install PHP MyAdmin to make MySQL administration easier. We will set up email using XM4. I will also finish off with installing Agenti Desktop Console for managing the Linux server. This is a great setup for PHP web development and is the perfect basis for CMS systems like Joomla, WordPress, or Drupal. To get the latest version of Ubuntu Server, go to the Ubuntu website and click on the Server tab and download the latest version, which is 16.04, and it will download an ISO file, which I will save to the desktop. LTS versions are released every 2 years. On the desktop, create a new folder called VBox Share, which we will use later to add content to our server. We are going to build our development environment inside a virtual machine, which we will configure using Oracle VirtualBox. If you don't have VirtualBox already installed, you can download it from virtualbox.org. Choose the platform package for your operating system and install. After you have installed VirtualBox, open it up. I have already created some virtual devices. To create a new machine, click on New, the name of our new VirtualBox tech box. Choose Linux and Ubuntu 64-bit. Select 1 GB of RAM. You may resize it after installation. And create a new virtual hard drive with 8 GB. Choose VirtualBox disk image. Use dynamically allocated space for the disk. Your new virtual hard drive will be called TechBox, so click to create the new instance of the virtual machine. Now, to configure it before installing the operating system, click on the Settings icon and go to the System panel. For processor, it's useful to increase the CPU to 2 if you have dual or quad cores. Ubuntu Server will require physical address extension support from the CPU. It can't be run in a virtual machine without it. In storage settings, we can use a virtual disk drive to load the Ubuntu Server ISO image that we downloaded from the desktop. Click the CD icon and browse to the ISO image. Select it. So when you go to start up the TechBox machine, it will offer up Ubuntu operating system for a fresh install. Now to configure the audio, since we don't need it, uncheck Enable Audio. On the network settings, we can open up bidirectional connections from our host machine, which is our actual machine, to our new virtual machine. On the advanced option on adapter 1, we can configure port forwarding for ports to access web pages and secure shell communication. Add a new rule for HTTP to set a non-standard port 8080 as the host port, which will map to port 80 on the virtual machine, which is the default HTTP port for web traffic. Our next rule for SSH specify the host port of 2221 and a guest port of 22. This will let us manage the server like you would remotely from a command line. And finally, we can add access to our shared folder. Select the VBox share folder that we created earlier on the desktop. And since I want full access to this folder on the virtual machine on startup, uncheck Read Only and select the Auto Mapped. And we are ready to boot up the virtual machine for the first time. It's powered off, so clicking the Start icon here is just the same as if we press the On button on a physical device. Keep in mind that your mouse cursor is owned by the virtual machine only after you have clicked in the virtual machine window. To return ownership of the keyboard and mouse to your host operating system, use the right control key on your PC. On the Mac host, the default host key is the left command key. Before we start the installation of the guest operating system, you are asked to select the language for the wizard menus. On the Ubuntu initial screen, press F4 and select Install a Minimal Virtual Machine. Press Enter to apply. Next, you are asked to select the default language for the installed system. Note here that Tab moves through the options, Space selects, and Enter activates buttons. Press Enter. Next, use the arrow keys to select your location from the country list. I am selecting Ireland. Say No to detecting keyboard layout on the next screen. Choose the particular country of origin for your keyboard and press Enter. Now we can see progress bars for detecting hardware and scanning the virtual CD-ROM drive. And the contents of the CD-ROM drive are now available. You can see the drive activity here, loading the additional components from the ISO image that was auto-mounted on startup. The installation goes through the process of detecting network hardware and identifying the virtual network card and applying our adapter settings. The installer goes through an automatic DHCP network configuration. Then we are asked to enter a hostname for the system. I'm calling it techbox.dev. Tab to continue, then enter to accept. We are asked to set the real name for the first user to create a standard user account. I'm entering my name here. Tab to continue. Now, for my username, I will use my alias, Gaughan-Smith. Whatever name you choose, enter it all in lowercase. And for the username and password requested here, you should make a note now because you are going to need it to log in after the operating system is installed. Re-enter password to verify. Tab to continue. Since this is just a development machine, we can say no to encrypt home directory. On my clock settings, it has detected Dublin, which is close enough, so yes. Choose Guided, use entire disk, which is the simplest partition strategy for our virtual machine. Opting to use a single large partition to contain everything is fine for our development server. Ubuntu will verify that we wish to erase the SCSI-3 VBox hard disk, which in fact is the virtual hard disk that we created when we configured TechBox. That's fine. With our partition scheme for the installation confirmed, tab over to Yes to write the changes to disk. Now we can see the operating system is installing from the ground up. Do we need to use HTTP proxy? No. Instead, we'll be relying on port forwarding through to the host network. So leave HTTP proxy information blank. Hit Tab to continue and enter. Once it has configured the advanced package tool, next question is if you want to automatically manage upgrades on this system. It's best practice to choose Install Security Updates automatically. Now, the system asks which software packages to install. I always choose Basic Ubuntu Server and OpenSSH, but since we are building a LAMP stack, we can also include LAMP Server option. Remember, spacebar to select, then Tab to continue. We are asked for a new password for MySQL root user. Since this is a local development machine, it's okay to give root as the password. We are getting real close to finishing the installation. You can see from the stream of messages that our Apache, PHP, MySQL, SSH, and other dependent packages are getting loaded now. The grub bootloader is the first program started by the BIOS, and it loads the Linux kernel into memory and then executes it. So yes to install grub bootloader. Tab to continue, then enter to accept. And the final step will unmount our ISO image and boot up the virtual machine. Now that our shiny new machine is ready to do some work, on the login request, enter your username and then your user password. Here we go. Welcome to Ubuntu. Let's check out our home directory. Type in ls-la. It looks okay. Now let's have a look at the network settings. Type netstat-tulpn. And there you see, it's listening on port 80 and port 22. At this point, you should update packages in case anything was missed in the installation. Run the apt utility to install and upgrade packages. Sudo infers system admin rights, so you will be asked for your password to invoke the command apt-get space update. This downloads the package lists from the repositories and updates cached information on the newest versions and their dependencies. An update should always be performed before an upgrade. So now type in sudo apt-get upgrade, followed by -y to answer yes to all questions. apt-get upgrade will fetch the latest versions of packages on this machine. It's important to understand that a basic apt-get upgrade never removes software or adds new software, so it is safe to use to keep your system fully patched because it should never break things. We started with a minimal operating system for a virtual machine, so the plan is to install additional packages as needed. Remember, we created a folder called VirtualBox Share on our desktop, so we want to share between the host and the guest machine. So VirtualBox uses a utility called VirtualBox Guest Editions to enable features like sharing folders, sharing the mouse, and the clipboard more easily. However, before we install guest editions, there are some important packages to install first. Just clear the screen now so you can see me type in the next command. Using the sudo apt-get command, we will install build-essential. This package is a collection of tools used for compiling software. Next, we're going to need linux-headers-virtual, which are files optimized for virtual hosts and define interfaces between components. DKMS, Dynamic Kernel Module Support package, provides support for installing supplementary versions of kernel modules. Nano, which is my preferred text editor. Compress and decompress files with zip and unzip. wget and curl will support downloading files to our server. man-db for referencing commands in the Linux manual pages. Also, ACPID, which is an event daemon that informs the operating system about power interface events, such as battery warnings, power supply changes, and sleep mode. And finally, -y to answer yes to all questions whilst the packages install. Next, we will configure a remote connection from the host machine. In the initial installation of Ubuntu, we selected the OpenSSH package. OpenSSH is a family of tools for remotely controlling or transferring files between computers. It will encrypt all communication between your host machine and the virtual Linux server. Since it's best practice to use SSH when managing servers remotely, we will set that up now. I'm on a Mac machine and that has a built-in SSH client in the terminal application. If you are on a Windows machine, then I recommend using Putty. It is a free standalone application that you can download from putty.org. I also want to be able to access our website from our browser using the hostname and domain name. A system's hostname is a friendly name by which other systems or applications can address the system on a network. Configuring the hostname for a system is therefore considered an important network configuration task. If you recall, we gave our server a hostname of techbox.dev. To check your hostname, execute the command hostname. If you want to have the hostname resolvable at all times, even without an active network, you can assign the hostname to the loopback IP address. Under Utilities, I will open a terminal. The configuration for the loopback IP is set in the /hosts on the host machine. In the terminal, type in sudo for admin rights, nano to launch the editor, /etc/hosts. On a new line, type 127.0.0.1 space takebox.dev. Control X to exit, Y to confirm the changes, and enter. Type in SSH to check out the various options you can use with this command. We set up the network settings with port forwarding on port 2221. Type SSH-P for port 2221 space your username at hostname. The first time connecting to your server over SSH, you will get a warning message that authentication can't be established. This is just saying that it hasn't seen your host key before. When you say yes, it puts the SSH key into your known_hosts file in the .ssh folder. And then on subsequent connections, it will compare the key it gets from the host to the one in the known_host file. Enter your password for the username. And when it says Welcome to Ubuntu, then you know that you have connected successfully. Who am I lets you know the name of the current user. pwd shows you where you are, the home directory of the current user. When you're finished with your server connection, simply log out. For those of you who are following along on a Windows machine, I will quickly go through how you can create a remote connection from your Windows machine to the virtual Linux server on Oracle's VirtualBox. Since I'm on a Mac, I can only go as far as showing you settings, but that should be enough. This is the Putty.org website on the Downloads page. Scroll down and choose Putty.exe for Windows. Simply download the exe program and launch it. Create basic settings for the connection, which you should save for reuse again. Your username at the hostname techbox.dev. The port is 2221, and the settings I'll call techbox. You can save these settings now and load them again the next time you open Putty. For now, just open the connection. The first time you'll get a warning, a security alert. Just accept it and you will be presented with a command interface where you can follow along with the rest of these instructions. Picking up where I left off on my Mac host machine, to simplify the method of connecting to the server, we can use SSH keys. Generating a key pair provides you with a public and private key. You can place the public key on any server and then unlock it by connecting it with a client that already has a private key. When the two match up, the system unlocks without the need of a password. Use the command ssh-keygen -t -rsa. The -c followed by comment in quotes is optional. When asked to enter the file name, the default is id_rsa, but I want to call it techbox_rsa to give it a unique name. The new keys are saved to the .ssh folder in the users directory of your host machine. Leave the passphrase empty so that you don't have to enter the passphrase each time you use the key pair. Enter blank again and the keys are generated, and you will see something like this, a random art image. To copy over the public key to the server, I must first make a .ssh folder on the server remotely. Type in ssh space -p 2221 username at techbox.dev space mkdir space -p space .ssh. Now enter the password for the server. I'll just flip over to the server session now, just to see that the .ssh directory has been created. There it is. Back over to the host machine, I will now copy the public key to the server to a file called authorized_keys. Type cat space tilde slash .ssh slash techbox_rsa.pub space pipe space ssh space -p 2221 space username at techbox.dev space open quote cat space angle bracket space .ssh slash authorized_keys close quote, and then press enter. Type in the user password for the server. Now, when I go over to my session, I can see that in the .ssh directory, I now have a file called authorized_keys, which contains the public key that we just generated. Back over on my host machine, we can simplify the connection command by a reference to the key in the .ssh config file. Type in nano space tilde slash .ssh dash config. In the config file, press down to a new line, type in host space techbox.dev, new line, then tab, port with a capital P, space 2221, then a new line, tab, then user with a capital U, space your username, new line, then tab, identity file, uppercase I, uppercase F, space tilde slash dot ssh slash techbox_rsa. When complete, press Ctrl X to exit, and then Y to save and enter. So in future, you can go ahead and log in very simply with SSH space username at techbox.dev, and you will no longer be prompted for a password. The benefit is that it's a lot easier to cut and paste into the terminal, or if you're a Windows user, the Putty command line interface. Well, it's time for a coffee break, and a roundup on what we've done so far. We created a virtual Linux machine in a hypervisor using Oracle VirtualBox. We installed Ubuntu 16.04 and modules for Apache, MySQL, and PHP 7. Then we configured a remote connection using SSH protocol. In the next part, we will configure and test Apache, PHP, and MySQL. So this was my first YouTube tutorial, and I hope it was useful to you. I'd be glad to get your feedback, and thank you for watching.